Welcome to NASDAQ Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at NASDAQ. Joining me at the market site in Times Square, we have Steve Brown. He's the managing director on NASDAQ's market intelligence desk with our midday update. Steve, it's great to have you with me as always. And by judging with all the green on our wall and these stock prices, we must have some positive China news today.
You know, it's yes and no. Today, of course, this week is all about trade. And today it word is out that China is prepared to offer an interim deal, a small deal. They'll buy some agricultural purchases as long as Trump will not implement any more tariffs, including the tariffs to go into effect next week in December. Problem is all of that's been on the table for a long time. There's nothing new there. And whether or not Trump would be willing to settle for that, I don't know. We'll have to see. But that's all that's going on in the market really is trade talks.
Right, and that's what we were talking about before. If we take a look at this chart here, if you look at a 1 year, we're, I think, 15 points away from where we are when we started off the year. So despite all this volatility and what felt like either a very down market or a very up market, we are literally flat.
We're flat, and even today with the market looking pretty good, if you go back and look at the indices, the four major indices, even with the gains, we have yet to hit yesterday's intraday high. And yesterday stank. Markets were down quite a bit, so there's nothing going on in the market. And one thing you can tell by over here with the market's kind of just, this is the S&P getting close to 3,000, but not really ever crossing over. One thing we're seeing is volumes are light, not just today, not just this week, consistently. In fact, one of the broker dealers had their earnings estimates cut because the volumes are just not there to support the earnings.
Right.
So a lot of up and down, but really all said and done, we haven't gone anywhere. The volume is just not there. So one way to view the market with this is it's more of a sentiment move versus people voting with their feet and selling.
Right, and that's what's be interesting when we get into earnings. You were just talking about estimate cuts. I'm curious to see what forward guidance is going to be like unless we get some sort of a resolution. And if we do get a resolution, do we actually stick to within those parameters of the resolution? But it's really hard for companies right now to invest in future growth. They don't know what the landscape's going to look like. So even for short-term guidance and even year-out guidance, I think that's really going to be one of the big movers for earnings season.
And and even the NBA, I mean, it's not a publicly traded company, but it just highlights all of the landmines in doing business in China. I mean, something really minor could explode and alter your earnings estimates overnight.
Right.
It's just no way to tell. I mean, NBA, Apple's had a problem this week. Was it GameStop? One of the other gaming companies has had issues. And this is only midday on Wednesday.
All right. Well, let's move along to your next chart. This is something really interesting that you pulled up from the IMF, and this takes a look at potential global GDP loss from trade disputes. These numbers look pretty big.
They are, and the new head of the IMF is Kristalina. Not Javalia, I can't get the last name, I apologize. Right. But anyway, she was talking yesterday and they did some work. About 2 years ago, she stated that about 70% of the world economies were growing. This year, about 90% of them are slowing. So it's pretty big. And if you look at these tariffs, every time you have some coming in, the impact gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And this is why I'm not sure that what Trump will do, because if we eliminate the blue sections here, and take those off, then in theory a lot of this red would go away, but that benefits China much more than America, so I don't know how that plays out politically. But the tariffs are really wreaking havoc with the world economy. It's not just the U.S. And one thing I don't think people have thought of, even if we do get a big, beautiful deal this week, it doesn't mean everything's just going to go back to perfect the way it was.
Right.
That ship has probably already sailed.
All right, well, next week, earnings kicks into high gear, so we'll have that to contend with in addition to macro headlines. Steve, thanks so much for joining us on the site. And thank you for joining me on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at NASDAQ.